Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Please tell me more about the work that you do at AIDC.
Well, the AIDC is an entity of the provincial government. It's called Automotive Industry Development Center, Eastern Cape. We support the automotive sector, the original equipment manufacturers, which is your Mercedes-Benz, your VW, Ford, Isuzu, together with their component suppliers, with whatever support they require to continue creating jobs, manufacturing cars and exporting cars globally.
Yes. What is the message here today to the investors that are hoping and are looking at the Eastern Cape maybe as a potential investment destination? What is the investment from your office and from Eastern Cape as a whole to the investors?
Well, I mean, the Eastern Cape is the hub of the automotive industry in the country.
Yes.
That's the first thing. With just over 100 years of automotive engineering, the province has got mileage behind it. The province has got mature and focused suppliers who have won global awards in providing quality components in the assembly process of a car. It is 45% manufacturer of cars in the country. So there's only 3 regions that manufacture cars: Eastern Cape, KZN, and Gauteng. So Eastern Cape is the biggest manufacturer, biggest exporter. So it's an important leg in a 3-legged pot if you're looking at manufacturing of vehicles. So the message is clear. With all the experience we have and the infrastructure we've built over the years as a province, both the special economic zones, our ports that we use to export cars, the quality of our multinational component suppliers. Where else would you want to invest if you want to start manufacturing of vehicles plant? Because I know very well that investors are looking for soft landing whenever they want to invest their hard-earned money. So our province provides that value proposition, as it were.
What are the prospects for maybe the near future that you are looking at with the work that you are doing? Also, your involvement with the young people, mentoring young people, bringing in young people. As you know, there's a pool of young people in this country that are unemployed. What is the work that you are doing considering that?
Okay, let's start with the prospects. I think the biggest thing that occupies us now is retention, investor retention. With the major challenges that the country is facing, our business case as a country to retain investors is becoming weaker and weaker. So we spend a lot of our time trying to retain what we have. So retain Mercedes, retain Isuzu, retain Ford, retain even outside our province, because we link with the other provinces in terms of supplies and components. So what occupies us more now is retention. That's the first thing. So the prospects, future prospects, are around us retaining what we have. The second issue around retention is the auto sector global is transitioning to electric vehicles now. So what does that look like in the Eastern Cape is what our work requires of us to do. So one of the things we do now on the policy side, because there's a new policy that DTI released, which is supposed to enable the production and export of electric vehicles. By the way, 95% of the cars manufactured in East London and Mercedes are exported to Europe. So if you see anyone driving a C-Class in South Africa, it's probably an imported C-Class. It doesn't come from East London. But that's the structure of the trade relation we have with the EU bloc around the manufacturing of cars. So when the EU bloc says it wants EVs by 2035, what does that mean for the province that manufactures cars which are exported to Europe? So one of the things we're doing there, we're setting up charging stations, electric vehicle charging stations across the province this year, so that we can encourage consumption of electric cars, right? We can also encourage our manufacturers to see that the province is taking the issue of EVs very seriously. Number 2, coming back to your issue of young people, we are starting a program to train a lot of young people who qualify in the engineering space on EV skills, electric vehicle skills. We're going to need a lot of them to be part of the network of building these cars, either at a factory floor, at Mercedes VW, or at a component supplier floor. So now, how does that look? Because we don't have EV skills programs in the country, and neither do we have qualifications that would enable you to earn a certificate, right, and make you employable. So we're working with the OEMs that are manufacturing EVs to give bursaries to young people who can then be trained on the job. And that would give a future prospect of a job to a young person. But we're also promoting a lot of engineering skills, because the auto sector is all about engineering. So we're working closely with NMMU now. We've just issued about 32 bursaries to students who would then qualify for engineering and be employable in the value chain. So we offer those bursaries now. Number 4, we are taking on a number of students and placing them on the shop floors of suppliers as interns. We've just placed 22 now. We've got 6 of our own that we place in our organization. And those are funded by MESITA, right? So we've got focus programs that we're running that are promoting engineering. Because as you would know, the pass mark, average pass mark of a maths and science student in South Africa is about 58%, 53%, somewhere around there. But we're competing with India and China. And the average pass rate of engineering students in India and China is upwards of 85%. So it's chalk and cheese. So you've got to go back that far back, grade 6, going up, so that by the time a student graduates grade 12, the prospects and the chances of them doing a mechatronics course are heightened. So we've coined a concept in the office that says it's not that young people are not employed. They are not employable. Because they come up with certificates that are not relevant to what the future requires. And this is a heavily engineered program. This is an industry that is a global industry. So whatever happens in Europe affects us dearly in terms of manufacturing of cars, because again, we export cars to Europe. So we've got to always keep up with the standard of the Europeans, who are our market, as it were. So the big story we can make about what we do. So we do this on behalf of the Eastern Cape government. I must go back to that. Because if you were inside, the Premier was talking about the province has to create an enabling environment to allow your Mercedes-Benz to further invest in the future, right? And this is one of the levers we use to create that enabling environment, looking after the needs of young people. I hope that's not a mouthful.
Yes, no. I'm soaking it all. Yes. Also, looking at the energy challenges. I mean, your sector, the automotive industries, uses a lot of that, and the Premier also pointed to that it might not be affecting maybe Mercedes directly, but now those that are supplying Mercedes with this or that are being affected, so it affects them. So what is your approach to these energy challenges?
Well, I think the first thing, the energy challenges are facing the country, not just the province. You've got load shedding on the one end, right? And then you've got renewable energy supply on the other end. So a future car would require that its components are manufactured using clean energy. So whilst you are still on coal, how do you transition to clean energy, right? And that's a national program that we have. But what we're doing now in our province, we're negotiating with ESCOM on behalf of your Mercedes, your component suppliers, that there's an exemption that they get given, so that they're not load shed. Because it affects, as the Premier was saying, it does affect the throughput of cars, all right? So we've secured a few exemptions. But together with NAMSA, which is a council of all the OEMs, we're looking at put it a focused policy that we could secure from national government that will enable the sector to be exempt, so that the suppliers that are supplying all the OEMs are able to supply that without interruption. But if that happens, it means another sector will have to suffer, unfortunately. So that's one. That's just on the load shedding, which is a short-term intervention. Then we're participating on the renewables program, which is a presidential trust transition program. And that seeks to migrate, as it were, the country towards using clean energy. I tell you a fact, the biggest emitter of CO2 globally is the transport sector. So it is this sector that needs to show its commitment to transition. And the efforts that the country is putting in by attracting investors who can put clean energy onto the grid is part of what the province is also part of, or chasing, as it were.
Is this clean energy drive practical for South African situation, African situation, or I don't know, like when you have to now, be practical about it, because we're exporting coal to Europe, and then we have load shedding here. That's what some people seem to be skeptical.
Yeah. You should look at it as a mixed energy solution. Coal is one as base load, nuclear is another one as base load, and then you've got renewables on the other side. So not one solution will give you a total answer. You need to find a way to balance the supply. It's going to be difficult for the country to industrialize with only just renewable energy. There's a strong need for a base load that would complement the renewables, right? Whether that base load is coal or nuclear or a combination of both is a policy decision that the country must make. I don't think practicality is what we should be asking. The question is it necessary? And the answer is yes. If you follow what's going on globally now, the CO2 emissions and what they're doing to the atmosphere, and us being one of the biggest emitters of CO2 as a country, we're amongst the top 20, in as much as transport is the biggest emitter. So we don't have a choice somehow as a country. We need to find a way to reduce CO2 emissions somehow. And this renewable energy transition is meant to also play a part in reducing that. But also you can even argue about, other than coal, what kind of base load that we could put. And you can talk about the nuclear energy as well. So you've got to find a way to create that balance so that the country can industrialize, the country can drop CO2 emissions, and the country can integrate itself into the global transitions of everything else that's going on. Being stuck with coal is not going to help you. You've got to find a way, because we're just not an economy that's sitting on its own. We're networked into the global space. So if EU says, prove to me that this Mercedes was, and the parts were manufactured using renewable energy, and you can't prove, they will not buy your car. They will buy a car from China or Brazil. And what that would do to you then, you lose the factory, you lose the jobs, you lose your influence in the sector globally. So a balance is needed somehow.
Yes. Just to round off, sir, also, I was asking you, in your own journey, to being CEO, what had helped you, and you pointed to education. Please speak more to education, to encourage people, and also to encourage the young people that are opening startups and that are getting into business. Yeah.
Look, all my life I've helped people start businesses before I got to where I am now. So it's a pet passion of mine to help people to start businesses. Okay, so I encourage that by all means. But number two, whatever business you're going into, you should know a lot about that business, because that's where the hard failure comes in as well. In as much as the issues around access to finance play a big role, access to markets play a big role, But you need to know the business you're getting into. So if you're getting into the media space, you should know what's going on in the media space. If you want to move into the engineering space, you should at least know what's happening in that space, right? So my encouragement is, yes, people must learn about what they want to do upfront. Be comfortable with the subject. Be comfortable with the topic. Be comfortable with the goings on in the industry you're going into. You are beginning to reduce possibilities of failure just by knowledge. The Bible will say, my people perish because of lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
So it's critical that you should know. You will battle the other devils of finding money to go to school. Those you can battle through. But if you have no understanding of where you want to go, you are in for a shock. So in my sense, in my life, for instance, I'm an economist, I'm not even an engineer. So I don't need engineering to understand the economics of the industry. Yeah? So they employ me as CEO because they expect me to direct traffic, not to be in the traffic. So you then have to employ the engineers to be in the traffic and do what is necessary to make sure that traffic is reduced, right? We've got engineers that are building cars. So how you work with the OEMs, how you work with the suppliers depends entirely on your understanding of the space of the automotive sector. It's not the engineering, because I don't build a car. But if you go on a factory floor, you must find engineers there who build cars and build components. I don't know if you get my... So for me, it was me understanding the global nature of the auto sector and using my background as an economist to piece things together so that we can better advise our province, better advise our government, what are the key focus areas. So when I talk about our average pass rate of engineering, it's because I studied and understand the economics of education. You can apply those economics theories in all the sectors, as long as you understand that that throughput is impeded by this obstacle. So if you deal with this obstacle, you can improve chances of that throughput being good. So if we deal with the pass rate of maths and science, we are likely going to spit out a lot of engineers who are likely going to be employees, who are likely going to be entrepreneurs in the space of automotive sector. So my system just connects the dots. And then I'm able to then say to the policymakers, this is where the obstacle is, this is how we close the gap. But education is key, knowledge is key.
The rural economy, lastly.
So one of the things we're doing now, because you will find that the investors that come into your space will want to go to the urban settings, right? Because there's SEZ, there's ports, there's an economy in East London, an economy in Port Elizabeth, right? So if you want to stretch the rand, you then look at what works in the rural areas, which is what I was talking about, your understanding of the nature of the industry. For instance, there is no discussion until now of the panel beaters when you're discussing automotive industry. Everyone always talks about Mercedes and components of Mercedes. But the value chain is bigger than just those two. So if you want to talk to me about the rural areas, then I tell you straight, we've got panel beaters who are creating employment for thousands of people. But these people have got no market that is a steady market, right? They would wait for you to bring your car. And then you don't pay, they keep your car, and then it just rolls over like that, right? So they are struggling wherever they are. But we also don't know that the insurance industry in South Africa spends 6 billion rands on car repairs alone. Government fleet in the Eastern Cape spends in the region of 150 million rands. Question is, who benefits from that spend if it's not the panel beaters in the rural areas? So how do you bring those panel beaters into the mainstream? What must you support them with such that they can qualify for insurance work, they can qualify for government fleet? This is a fact. The Eastern Cape is the only province through this premier that has made an announcement to find 300 panel beaters wherever they are. And we support them to access insurance work and government fleet work. We are still in the auto sector, but we're just not discussing Mercedes. We're not discussing VW. You know? So it's that understanding that people like us must come in and provide, so that all these dots are connected. The auto sector has got a long value chain, longer than just Mercedes and component suppliers. You've got West Bank, which is a bank established specifically to finance cars. They are in the value chain. You've got retail stores that sell cars. They are in the value chain. You've got panel beaters, which we use called aftermarket, that are in the value chain. Here, you see, you've got franchises, which is your dent doctor, your car services. They are also part of the value chain. So what we've begun to do is to bring those levels, which were never part of discussions in the past, as part of the value chain. And then the transformation, the empowerment, then you would realize those things once you begin to put actionable instruments to support the other parts of the value chain. So that's my job. That's what I do. No day is the same with us.
No, Mr. Shelman, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.